So yeah, I grew up in the Park Hill neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. Although now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't say I grew up, because even here at the ripe old age of 53, it has occurred to me that calling myself a grown-up doesn't really seem to fit. So let's just say I lived for over 30 years in the Park Hill neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. We moved into that neighborhood, we being my mom, my sister, and I moved into that neighborhood summer of 1974. And we got there after having lived overseas on a military base for about 4 or 5 years. I got to Denver with a British accent. I could speak the Queen's English as well as fake a mean Cockney accent. I loved the way I sounded. Apparently, though, none of that made me popular with the kids at the first predominantly black elementary school I attended. To say that my time in Denver was troubled would be adequate. We had 3 deaths in the family the first 3 years we were there, and I can remember telling my mom that maybe we shouldn't have come back, that somehow or another I took it upon myself to feel responsible in a small way. I'm not sure how I made that connection, being as young as I was, but that is the way a child's mind works. I think they do make certain connections that aren't always rational or logical. They are children, after all. They haven't had the life experience to connect dots in a meaningful or adult way, I guess I could say. Even though I lived there for as long as I did, despite the friendships that I made, it's never really felt like home. go back to the city and I feel like a tourist who just happens to know her way around. It feels even less hospitable than it did when I lived there. In fact, it feels to me like the entire city has been gentrified. Growing up, or when I was a kid, there were places in and around the city that felt welcoming. They felt accommodating. And as a little black kid who wasn't necessarily accepted by the black community in which I lived, having those spaces where I could go and feel somewhat welcomed, somewhat accepted, meant a lot. All of those places have changed. Some are even just plain gone. They've been torn down, and in their place, there are these cookie cutter, kind of nondescript buildings. And it all just feels cold and sort of closed off now. I go back because it's where I got my start, if you will. It's where I first became acquainted with my writing, first became aware of the power of words. It's also where the majority of my immediate family still live. And so I go back to see them. My closest friends from high school still live in the city, and it's always a good time to go back and visit and laugh and joke, reminisce with them as well. But overall, there isn't much left in that city that calls to me. This latest trip, I took a walk through the neighborhood, and I can remember all the different families that lived in the various houses on the different blocks. All of them are gone now. I think on the block where my childhood home is, it's just my mom and one other family across the street who have been there as long as we have, who were there when we moved in. Everybody else is gone. It was sad this last trip. And I'm sure I'm going to make at least a few more. After all, I was fortunate enough to develop a partnership with the Blair Caldwell African American Library. And so I've been going back and doing writers' workshops there for the last, has it been maybe 7 years? Of course, didn't go last year for the oh so obvious reason, and may or may not go back to do the workshops this year. Just depends on how things open up, how the consequences of the pandemic shape our future face-to-face endeavors. Whether I go back to do workshop or not, like I said, my immediate family, those that are still living, are in the city, and I will need to go back to visit, to check on folks. And sadly enough, as it is inevitable, there will be funerals to attend. Prayerfully not for many, many more years. I can honestly say, though, that if it weren't for my family, I doubt that I'd ever go back to the city. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not down on it. I'm not by any means knocking it. Denver is still very beautiful for the most part. Nothing can beat that view of the mountains on a clear day. But it's just never felt like home, and it feels even less welcoming to me now. So I guess it is true what, quote, they say, you can never go home again.